I think it's safe to say that 2023 has been a fantastic year for video games. We've had remakes that we didn't ask for, but they were brilliant when they dropped. Bethesda finally released Starfield, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it. And yes, we got the standard yearly releases like Formula 1, Call of Duty, FIFA, and some more highly anticipated games like Hogwarts Legacy and Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Now, I've just spent the last 4 weeks or so overseas, generally taking a break away from my 9 to 5 job, my YouTube work and life in general, but during that time I'd been thinking about what my game of the year would be, and while this channel is somewhat new-ish, this year will be harder to pick because we've had some great games, but we've also had some not so great games, and some games that I checked out throughout the year, one of which you, the viewer, suggested that really surprised me. Now, just in case you didn't know, these picks will be my personal games of the year, and our list might be completely different, and that's okay. You may think Gollum is the best game of the year, or Walking Dead Destinies, and if you do, dude, right on, I'm glad you enjoyed them. Lastly, before I jump into it, if you enjoy this video or any other video on this channel, consider chucking me a subscribe, perhaps, or sharing the channel with some mates, or just saying howdy in the comments or over on Twitter. Now, let's get into it. A lot of you found my channel from a video I did earlier in the year asking the question on Resident Evil 4 or Dead Space and which was a better remake. Now, both games are absolutely fantastic remakes and in my opinion must-play games. Resident Evil 4 Remake was my first experience with the iconic and frequently retold story of Resident Evil 4, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. There were moments of action, a bit of comedy, and I found myself invested in the story, and surprisingly, towards the end of the game, and without going into any spoilers, it threw some more horror aspects my way that I wasn't expecting. However, if you have seen the video, then you know I preferred Dead Space over Resident Evil 4. Again, personal choice, and Dead Space takes my pick for the best remake of 2023. It was a remake that nobody asked for, but I'm very thankful that we got. The updated graphics, the new controls and gameplay for Zero Gravity, the atmosphere of horror and tension that keeps the game sort of tense from start to finish, merged with its fantastic sound design, made a great game. Dead Space was also a game where I never overly felt safe while playing, where other horror games maybe 2 hours or so I started to feel a bit more comfortable and the jump scares weren't overly affecting me. But Dead Space left me constantly on the edge, unsure what was around a corner or what was going to happen. The original Dead Space was also the first ever horror game I've ever played and finished, so while yes there might be a bit of a bias, I've got a bit of a love for the Dead Space series, and this remake hit me right in the member berries, or more so, the trauma berries.
Into a world that has already felt that influence. Briar has been under the close watch.
Now, a bit of a sleeper hit, at least in my opinion, but Warhammer Boltgun. It is a simple, classic arcade shooter like Doom, Wolfenstein, Dark Forces before it, but in the world of Warhammer 40k and tied loosely into 2011's Space Marine. Now, we play as a Ultramarine, because we always play as Ultramarines, on a chaos-infected planet, and it's basically, well, no, it is Doom in the Warhammer world, and it's super entertaining. The graphics are pixelated, there's demons and cultists, and Chaos Space Marines and Demon Princes to face off against. Iconic Space Marine weapons, simple yet entertaining gameplay with no nonsense. What more could you ask for in a simple, fun indie game? And yes, you might be asking, how is this on a list when there are other larger, more popular games that maybe aren't listed future on in this video, and Boltgun was a great game to pick up, enjoy, and put down. It is also a great game to play on the Nintendo Switch because it's something so simple and entertaining that you can instantly pick up where you left off, and it is so effortless on the Switch. It's great for going to and from work, and that's why Boltgun is on my list, because sometimes that's all a video game needs to be. A simple pick up, play, and move on. After multiple years of waiting and teasers, Bethesda Studios released Starfield, and yes, in my opinion, it is a fantastic entry to the Bethesda game library alongside Skyrim and Fallout before it. Now, we'd create our character with an in-depth character creator, allowing us to pick backstories and buffs and nerfs, and basically do whatever we want in this open universe that is Starfield. We could follow the main story, we could become a space marshal, we could upgrade weapons like we could in the Fallout games, and just like you'd expect in an RPG, there is the traditional leveling up system that changes your handling for certain weapons and what items you can buy or what you can work on with your starship. And well, if you played Skyrim or Fallout, imagine the same gameplay with better graphics and set in space. And that's what Starfield is, and that's all it really needs to be. The level of customization Starfield offered to the player too is genuinely impressive. The amount of time I spent creating my own starship, trying to create a Malcolm Reynolds Han Solo style of character who favoured pistols as my main weapons, which I generally go for in these RPG set games. But anyways, Starfield was the overall fun game that it'll be on a lot of people's Game of the Year lists, if not their actual Game of the Year, and I can totally see why. Now, we've had loads of popular video games released around existing IPs. Hell, I've just started to cover the Shadow of Mordor series, and you might have checked that video out, and yes, it's still the best Lord of the Rings video game, and Harry Potter fans have been waiting for years to get a game of their own, and Hogwarts Legacy definitely delivered. Avalanche Studios not only created a brilliant world full of Easter eggs and detail in the world, which was wicked, it also did a great job by having players create a student who attends Hogwarts in their 5th year. So you're not running around as an 11-year-old, but you're playing as a 15-year-old student, basically the same age that Harry was in Order of the Phoenix. We get sorted into our house, we get to customize our outfits, we get to go to classes and learn new spells, basically what you'd want from playing a Wizarding World RPG. But what really worked for me was setting the game before the events of Harry Potter, before Tom Riddle, and a year or two, I believe, before Dumbledore even attends Hogwarts. So at least to my knowledge, there aren't any events or details that conflict with the lore of the Wizarding World. Hogwarts Legacy was honestly a game that had me more excited for a sequel or what the studio might do next in this world, because when your first entry is this good, imagine what you could do next. Now, when it comes to sports games of the year, this was a tough choice. We had F1 23 this year, which yes, I enjoyed. However, like last year in F1 22, Codemasters provided a midweek update to the game that reset the controls for custom steering wheel configuration, and they did this a couple of times, and it had me stop playing F1 23 earlier than I normally would, and I like to play F1 games if it's not obvious. Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 is a great game, and as I said, for the few of you who did check out that video, thank you if you did, I said it was the next step up from Mario Kart. But Forza Motorsport was a racing game that had me laughing with mates multiple times, and being crossplay and on Game Pass too, it was a wicked selling point, or at least a playing point to convince some mates to try it out. We had so many cars to choose from with a load of tracks and heaps of different ways to drive your cars with simulation settings, to the point where I completely screwed my engine and my gearbox and I couldn't get out of first gear. It was also a racing game where different difficulty settings and using different layouts didn't provide massive advantages to other drivers. What I mean by that is, when I played against my mates, one was on an Xbox, one was on a PC using a controller, and then there's me and my steering wheel and my racing cockpit, and I struggled to pull away in some instances and struggled to catch up with my mates using a controller. We had funny crashes, we had corner cuttings, and honestly, I loved playing the new Forza Motorsport, and it was truly a return to form for the series away from the Horizon setting.
Do it.
Now, this isn't overly Game of the Year, as saying my Game of the Year was a game that didn't release in 2023 is a bit of a cop-out, but I did go back and play some games that I've not played before this year, or gone back and reviewed a game that I've not really covered on this channel before. Obviously, I went back and played, Aliens Colonial Marines 10 years later, and that a lot of you checked out, which, thank you, I hope you've been enjoying the channel. But the one game that I played that I only got to check out thanks to someone commenting on my last year's 2023 Cyberpunk review to check out was Days Gone. And without a doubt, it was one of the best video games I played in 2023, so much so that I did 2 videos on it with a spoiler and spoiler-free review. It merged the worlds of, say, The Walking Dead and Sons of Anarchy, at least that's what I thought, and while the introduction to the game was quite slow, I wasn't overly sure about it. But about 3 hours later into the story, it sunk its teeth into me. So much so that I went out and found the Days Gone soundtrack on vinyl, and a friend of mine gave me her Days Gone hat that she got from PlayStation Australia when they were giving out their PR kits. And the new Royal Enfield Himalayan is real tempting because it looks like the drifter bike from Days Gone. Anyways, it was an open world action survival game, or maybe not action, but it was an open world survival game set in a post-apocalyptic zombie-esque like world. They're kinda zombies, but they're kinda not. If you want to know more, you can check out those videos. But the story was beautiful after the opening introduction. The game was horrifying with hordes of hundreds of freakers. The music by Nathan Whitehead was creepy when it needed to be, but then it would swing into an emotional setting and some isolation with it too, and it was gorgeous. Days Gone is my favourite PlayStation property, more so than Spider-Man, The Last of Us and God of War. Take that however you will, but if you've not played Days Gone, all I can say is check it out. Now, I wanted to add in something as well for the best update to a game for 2023, because it's a common thing in gaming nowadays when a game releases for it to be a bit underpolished. Game developers can either go one of 2 ways. They can leave the game alone and never return to it and move straight on to the next game, or they can stick with it, fix any problems and try to fix things in general, and no other game in my recollection, history, whatever you can think of, but no other game in my opinion has done this better than Cyberpunk 2077 and its Phantom Liberty update. We got more story-based content set in the visually impressive world, we got updated graphics that are, honestly, breathtaking, more Keanu Reeves and now Idris Elba. Cyberpunk 2077 did a real 180. Now, last year, as I mentioned, I did return to Cyberpunk to see what it was like before Phantom Liberty was even announced, and it was a fun game that CD Projekt Red did work on. But here, Phantom Liberty and the 2.0 update, this is a truly fantastic RPG, and the DLC with the update 2 was a re-release of Cyberpunk. So if you did have a bad time when it originally released, well, there's your sign to go check it out now. Now, here are a few games that deserve a moment or two for a quick shout out, as 2023 has been a great year for games, and I've played my fair share this year. Assassin's Creed Mirage was a great return to form for Assassin's Creed games as a franchise. It went back to its roots and traditional gameplay and moved away from the RPG mechanics and Souls-esque style of combat, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Dead Island 2, even though it was a sequel that was about 10 years too late, it was still funny and I had fun playing this with friends. The introduction and the character that I chose was great, and while playing Dead Island 2 with friends, seeing them drop kick zombies into an acid pool was always hilarious. It goes without real any surprise, but Rainbow Six Siege still remains my favourite online first-person shooter. It's challenging, it's constantly getting new DLC and operators and map reworks, and it's interesting that a game so old now isn't being pushed aside for a new release. A new release that's worse than the one before it. Now, Redfall. I know a lot of people didn't like this, but honestly, I didn't think it was that bad. It was, yes, a great Game Pass game, and I had fun playing this game with mates.
Oh, don't shoot if I'm standing next to it!
I also enjoyed a game that removed zombies and replaced them with vampires, and I think that was pretty cool and creative. And the atmosphere and tone for some of its environments were kinda freaky too, and in a good way. Now, yes, I did play a little bit of Lethal Company. I think I played maybe 2 hours or so with mates, and I will say, for what I've played so far, it's funny for what it is, and I'm looking forward to playing more of it.
Unlimited fucking power boys. I can hear you fucking shit talk. Come here, say to my face.
And finally, I've played about 2 to 3 hours of Return to Moria, and it's got some great foundations, and I think it's going to be a bit of a sleeper hit in a year's time or so if it gets any more updates to see how the game goes on. But, well, as you can probably guess what my game of the year is, because I've not mentioned it already, and it's not Baldur's Gate 3. Yes, I know people love that game, but I've not overly played much of it, so I can't add it for a game of the year list because I've not played enough of it. Seems only fair, right? But yes, I will check out Baldur's Gate 3 when I get the chance in 2024, so do not worry about that, and it might make it into next year's list just like how Days Gone made it into this year's list. Now, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was a brilliant game, and Survivor built on the solid foundations before it and solved all the issues that I had with Fallen Order. We could customize Cal even more with the standard lightsabers, but also clothing options, hairstyles, and we even got a blaster we could customize. The story continued on with Cal, but things aren't how we left them at the end of Fallen Order, which made me more invested and interested to find out what actually happened. We then divert away from the Empire as the main villain, and we get bounty hunters, battle droids, and remnants of the Separatist army. Jedi Survivor 2 also avoided what majority of sequel games do, and it's reset its main character. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say if we look at the original God of War for example. Kratos becomes more powerful and powerful as the first game goes on, then in God of War 2, he is the God of War, who then gives up his powers and we're basically at step 1 again. But Jedi Survivor doesn't reset Cal. He retains all of his abilities from the first game. With larger planets and more areas to explore compared to the first one, we need to then learn new abilities to navigate the world and explore temples and use for the general combat of the game. New lightsaber combat, including a blaster variant, which is wicked, character customization, and the overall story of Star Wars Jedi Survivor has me super excited for what Respawn gives us next in their story, because the way this ends and the way the villain worked here, well, there's a reason it's my game of the year. And that's it. That's my 2023 games of the year. Obviously, my list will be different to yours. I know a lot of people really enjoyed Baldur's Gate 3, and I can see why. It looks like a full-on, involved, properly entertaining game, and yes, I'll have to actually take a look at it properly when I get the time. Now, you might have preferred Resident Evil 4 over Dead Space as the best remake of the year, and that's completely cool too. We've got Suicide Squad releasing in early 2024, which, as a big fan of the Rocksteady Arkham series and a sequel to those games, I'm quite keen for, obviously. Tekken 8 looks like it could be some fun, Dark Forces Remaster is coming out, and I'll be taking a look at Baldur's Gate as I mentioned, as well as the next F1 game. I'll finally be trying to finish and go through The Last of Us, and hell, I kinda want to return and try going back to World of Warcraft. But whether 2023 was your favourite year in gaming or you spent an unhealthy amount of time in Baldur's Gate 3, ain't no judgment here. Always remember to play with each other and play with yourself.